Well, here we are at the end of the road with Origin Jumpworks. Now, you might think that this is where I kind of let loose. This is where I kind of go like, oh my god, look at all these ships. You know, I just spent a whole day talking about Drake, where it's like function over form, and here is the complete opposite of that. And initially, that could have been the case, but the truth is, and like this is actually, when I think about it now, watching this video, this is actually the first time that I've properly been through the 890 jump. I've done videos with the 600 before. I don't own one, but I've been on other people's, and certainly I've flown around in the other ships. We've all seen the 300 for years, though in its current incarnation it is fairly new. You can tell I've never been in the 890 jump because I'm kind of looking around going, okay, how exactly do you get in this thing? But I kind of want to talk about overall the criticisms that have been laid against a lot of ships over the years. A lot by me, and I'm not the only one, but there's a lot of us who have certain criticisms of certain ships in the game, where form has gone so far ahead of function, and sometimes it has impeded function, right? The 600 and the 890 jump are relatively new ships, and you can tell when you go through these ships that they have learned a lot of lessons from the ships that have gone before them. They have... When you saw the 600 being built, when you saw the 890 being built, you remember in the original iteration of the 890 that they were showing us, there was like a grotto inside of it, and there was all kinds of like kind of ridiculous stuff. But that was around the same time that the 600 came out, and the 600 got a considerable amount of pushback, not only from people like me, but from the owners themselves, who kind of looked at it and said, this looks not very luxurious. It looks more like cold and antiseptic, like a dentist's office or something like that. It was kind of like a post-modern neo-futuristic dentist office more than it was an upscale classy ship. And the 890 jump seems to have bridge the gap in a lot of ways. Sorry, the ship is dark, so I'm having to use the headlamp. I'm just going in to kind of power the ship up and hopefully, turn the lights on inside of it. But the 890 kind of steps a little bit beyond the dentist's office and actually becomes a proper starship in and of itself. And you can tell that it's these corrections, it's these course corrections, it's these lessons learned, it's the criticisms being taken to heart and not just being dismissed as they were in the past, but actually seriously being considered. Now, whether those criticisms were echoed internally as well, but were shut down, and then that process or that mechanism no longer exists to just say, no, it's fine, don't change anything. I think that CIG has become a lot more open to criticism, and in the end, we've all benefited from that with a lot of ships. And I think that the Origin luxury ships are, especially when you look at the stretch between the 600 to the 890 in terms of interior design and how things went, it almost makes you feel bad about the 600 because it's so obvious that they are going to have to kind of go back. When you look at all this, they are going to totally have to go back and almost do a page one rewrite on the interior of the 600. Like, they're gonna have to do that. It's gonna be a weird kind of transition if you're moving up from a 600 to an 890. That is definitely going to be a bit of a weird one. But overall, what do I think of it as a ship? The 890 jump is... It's supposed to be this luxury yacht / transport now, potentially in the future. You're going to get access to missions where it's transport the VIPs. Who knows? Maybe you're taking the entire, board of directors of such and such XYZ corporation on a tour of the stars. And if you do a good job, you get an extra reward, that sort of thing. As a facilitator for a career in Star Citizen, I think it's a great ship. Might be difficult for the captain of the ship to relinquish the good cabin to passengers, possibly. But overall, I do like the ship. The efficient use of the interior is pretty damn good. Its ultimate usefulness in the universe is dependent on CIG implementing, game mechanics and things like that. So in the meantime, it may be something of just a personal transport, a luxurious personal transport at that. Maybe you intend to become, a captain of industry, a baron of the trade lanes, and this is how, your personal transport that you go flying around to make your deals and all that with. And, the rest of your business is run by members of your organization. Maybe that's why you own an 890 Jump. If you do, hats off to you, because at least you're building a career, and this is kind of what you want out of it. This is how you want to do business. Great. Fantastic. That's really awesome. Reflectiveness on this water maybe needs a little work. But I really, in terms of how it uses the space on the interior, how it's organized and all that, I really don't have any complaints. Is it a ship that I would own? No, it is not a ship that I would own, but I don't expect that every ship that I would own, everyone else should own as well. There are things that I like, there are things that I don't like, there are things that you're going to like that I don't like, but that's for different reasons. A ship like this, I'm not interested in luxury crew transport, and even if I was a crime lord who somehow made so much money that something like this was within the realm of possibility, I still I don't know, I've watched too many movies, and I've seen how when you try to pick up the glitzy, glamorous lifestyle, that's when everything kind of goes to shit in most of your crime dramas or thrillers. So I think I'm just fine flying around in the ships that I have and not being too flashy. But if that's your bag, then more power to you. And that, is kind of how I feel about the Origin ships. They're not really my bag. They're a little bit too fancy. There's a little bit too much space kind of used up in... Oh my God, is that a weapon rack? Is this a pleasure cruise craft that has such extensive weapon racks? I wonder why military ships like the Hammerhead don't have weapon racks like this. Well, neither here nor there. It's not, I'm not really of a big fan how they use the space. I would be like, where do I stock all my cargo? Where do I keep my weapons? Where do I keep my body armor? Those are my main questions. And like, oh, look at this wonderful paneling, and look how the colors flow into this and flow into that. Do not give a shit. Do not give a shit at all. But for those who do, fine. Because at least it would make practical sense in the sense of this ship. If it is that luxury transport, if it is that yacht that you can hire out and stuff like that, then it makes sense that it would use its space like this. And it makes sense that it would have opulent interiors and it would care about these things like that. Now, if it's a personal transport like a 300 and you're like, well, I gotta have gold, I have to have, carbon fiber and Corinthian leather and all that in my interior, and, a designer is sitting there going, should I fuss with the cockpit view and the weapon placement, or should I do the Corinthian leather or the carbon interior? That's where I kind of draw the line with CIGs, when they kind of go, oh, let's worry about the important stuff like the Corinthian leather and the carbon fiber interior. That's the sin that's being committed. But in terms of this ship, it makes logical sense for it to be built this way and laid out this way. So while it is not my bag, and this kind of goes for the 600 as well, though the 890 clearly out in the lead in terms of execution, I think that it makes sense. So if this is what you own and this is what you want to enjoy, then by all means. It's not for everyone, certainly not for me, but in terms of how it was put into the game and what it enables the players to do and how it functions in the universe, it makes sense to me. And so I have really nothing negative to say about it, apart from the fact that I wouldn't own one. But then again, since I'm not one who owns one, it's not really up to me. Since I'm not one who would go out and buy one, then it's not really up to me. It's up to the people who would buy it. And from my point of view, if that's their thing, it looks like they're getting decent value. Now I'm going to kind of cap things off because we are at the end of a marathon week here by talking about the Origin ships, kind of quickly going through a number of them. 85X, I mean, okay. It's kind of like a fancy, classy snub, a two-seater. That's cool. Fine. If you want a snub fighter, I guess it makes sense as a snub fighter. The 300 series, I think, obviously has recently gotten its rework, and once again, a benefactor of a lot of lessons learned. Certainly in how you load cargo into it and things like that. The livability and the usability of the 300 line has increased immeasurably since the refactor of that ship. So I don't think that the 300s are a bad purchase as far as a starter ship goes, and in fact a bit of a stylish purchase as far as starter ships go. So kind of thumbs up in that direction. Now the 125, I would say, is probably a ways off. You're probably not going to see that for a long time, but let's be honest, it was mostly an LTI token, so The 600, unfortunately, as you can see, the 890 was the benefactor of the mistakes that were made with the 600. Is CIG going to rush to kind of go back and rework the 600? I don't think so. Unfortunately, and this is a problem with not just CIG, but this is a problem with a lot of video game companies, is because of time constraints, staffing constraints, their schedules are so inflexible that unless someone comes down the line and says specifically, no, stop, we have to kind of go back and rework this thing, they will just kind of patch things together as best they can and then move on to the next thing. So I don't think that any substantial rework of the interior of the 600 is forthcoming anytime soon. It is probably going to be something that, truthfully, I would not be surprised if a rework of the 600 interior to make some corrections is something that is years away, quite unfortunately for the owners. And that is kind of, it's the strengths and the weaknesses of this development, or this style of development, which is the later ships get the benefit. The earlier ships, unless they are already in need of a full rework, kind of just end up getting neglected. So that is that. So tomorrow's show, which I guess officially will be the end of the marathon, we will be discussing the future of the Hammerhead, if it has one at all, in terms of my hangar at least. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.